Okay, so welcome everybody. We have an amazing presentation for you tonight, and I hope you decide it was worth waiting for. I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. As you know, we're going to be talking about the history of the Seven Ray Order, which today most of you know as the Great White Brotherhood. Okay, but before it was Great White Brotherhood, it was known as the Order of the Seven Rays, and it's the most ancient of all mystery school traditions. And it was founded way back at the time of the continent known as Mu or Lemuria. Now, I should be able to shift, right? Should I? I'm on video chat. The Seven Rays Order and Mystery School. And our second slide is the history and the order of the Seven Rays and the Great White Brotherhood, which I just mentioned are one and the same. So we're going to go way, way back at the very beginning of the Seven Ray Order, and in order to do that, we have to, I think, go about 100 billion miles away from here, all the way back to the Pleiades. This is truly the cosmic origin of the Seven Ray Order. You start back with Sophia, Lady of the Seven Rays, and Sophia is a name for the Pleiades. The Gnostics used to refer to the Pleiades as the seven pillars of Sophia. Now, the Pleiades are also known as the seven candles before the throne. They're also known as the seven candles before the throne. They are a portal to a higher universe, a more refined, a higher dimensional universe. And many of us came through that portal. In fact, most people on Earth today came through that portal. The Gnostics refer to this higher universe as the pleroma, the fullness of God. This is where we all came from, and this is where we return to. Those Gnostics that learned how to astral travel and return home while they were living in a physical body moved through that gateway of the Pleiades and then returned home to the pleroma. So this is why the Pleiadians want to assist us, because we have a very close connection to them. Now, getting back to Sophia, Sophia is the goddess. In all traditions, they have a goddess, a universal goddess that takes the form of a serpent, a snake, a dragon, and the anthropomorphic form of a human female. Okay? And what every tradition tells you is that the universe was created by a dragon or a serpent, which they call the goddess, or they will call the son of the goddess. According to their cosmology, at the very beginning of time, all there was an infinite consciousness, which they would refer to as spirit or God. Now, when God was ready to create the universe, it created energy. It emanated its power and its wisdom. And this is what we refer to as the goddess. Okay? It can also be said that the God emanated seven rays from itself, and the seven rays together are the goddess. Okay? And this is what you find in all pre-Christian traditions. In all pre-Christian traditions, you find that it is a serpent, that it is a dragon, or it is the goddess who created the universe, and oftentimes they will represent it as a seven-headed serpent, or a serpent with seven tails. And or they will represent it as a serpent with 7 curves on its body. Now, the Maya referred to it as Tisab, which means the 7 rattles of the great rattlesnake. To them, Pleiades was a great rattlesnake, the goddess as a rattlesnake, and it was the home of the divine mind, the divine force. According to them, their belief was that the Pleiades is the creative force from which much of what is created in this part of the galaxy is created. She is the divine mind, and she is the divine force. The divine mind generates the divine force that crystallizes into all the forms of physical objects, physical matter we have in this part of the universe. Okay? Now, why did the Pleiadians why did the Pleiadians want to help us here? And the reason is because many of us came through the Pleiadian Stargate. We came from a higher universe as pure spirit. We came through the Pleiadian Stargate into this physical universe. And many of us actually stayed there in the Pleiades for some time to adjust to this new universe. And then after that, then we found our way to our solar system and our planet. Another reason that we have such a close connection to the Pleiades is because our sun is considered to be the 8th star of the 7 or the 8 Pleiadian constellation, according to the Maya. Okay? And according to the Maya, there have been Pleiadian missionaries coming here since the beginning of time to help uplift us, to help us achieve self-knowledge on this plane, self-knowledge of who and what we really are. Okay? Now, tonight I'm going to be speaking especially about one of those missionaries known as the Lord of the Seven Rays. Now, the Lord of the Seven Rays is recognized as the son of the goddess. And one of the names of the goddess is Kritika. Kritika is one of the names of the Pleiades. And one of the names of her son is Kartikeya, which means son of the Pleiades. So Kritika was born through the Pleiades. You might say that Kritika began as pure consciousness that was given birth through the goddess. It was the original infinite spirit that once it created the goddess, then it took birth through the goddess. And it became its own son. So Kartikeya is the infinite spirit clothed in matter. And in the image you see in front of you, Kartikeya has 6 heads. This is one of the inheritances from his mother. Remember, his mother is the Pleiades. And you can only see 6 visible stars of the Pleiades. So his 6 heads represent the 6 visible stars of the Pleiades. And one legend, an important legend, is the Gnostic legend of Sophia and her son during the time of the Garden of Eden. When Sophia looked down upon us struggling humans down here, us very ignorant humans at that point in time, and she said, well, they deserve to know that divinity exists within them as them, that the spark of spirit, the infinite spirit, exists within them as them. So it was Kartikeya that she then sent down here to enlighten us to that knowledge, to self-knowledge, true self-knowledge. And he arrived in different shapes and forms according to different traditions we will talk about. Now, according to sacred geometry, and I know there's got to be some fans of sacred geometry here tonight, this is actually the sacred geometrical symbol of the sun of god-goddess Kartikeya. In fact, let me move a slide ahead. In India, this is known as the yantra, the geometrical form body of Kartikeya, and you can see it is a six-pointed star, representing the union of God, goddess, spirit, and matter united together. Now, if you go back to the slide of sacred geometry, you see in the center is the six-pointed star, the yantra of Kartikeya. Now, underneath that six-pointed star, many of you will recognize the seed of life. Okay? And especially those that have studied Drunvalo's work about the flower of life, you'll know that this is known as the seed of life. And it is truly the first form of the Creator as his son. And as his son, he will, well, according to some traditions, he will actually create the whole universe. So it's actually the form of the demigod, the original creator spirit that created this whole universe. And what you're going to find is that in the center is the creative monad. Okay? Spirit begins the creative process as a circle. And then forming around that circle is six other circles. You're always going to have the six surrounding the one, and together you'll have the seven. Okay? Drunvalo talks about the singular monad as looking in six different directions and creating the six circles around himself. Now, I look at it a different way, but that is for a future presentation, which will go into that. But another thing about the seven, and this is very important, because when you think of the son of God, goddess, you have to think of seven. Of course, we've talked about the six heads, but in some traditions they say it actually has seven heads and one is hidden. And the hidden one represents spirit because he is the union of spirit and matter together. Okay? But he is the Lord of the seven rays, so he's always associated with seven. And so the seven parts of this sun, the Lord of the seven rays, have, sometimes they've been called the seven parts of the sun, or the seven rays of the sun, or the seven archangels. Okay? And we'll talk more about that in a moment. Now, Kartikeya has been coming to this earth many times. And this is what I found out through my initiation in different mystery schools and a lot of direct one-on-one teachings that I've had with Kartikeya. The first time he came was approximately 250 to 200 million years ago. And at that time, the earth was in its infant stage. Still, it was still rocking and rolling. Volcanoes, earthquakes, natural disasters were happening all over the planet. But some of you will recognize that number, 250 to 200 million years ago, as the beginning of true life on this planet. It's when the great continent of Pangaea was first created. Right? And so Kartikeya's arrival corresponded with the creation of Pangaea. Now, in some traditions, they say that Kartikeya came as pure energy, as a spiral, like a serpent. Some say that he came as two spirals. And they represent those spirals as two serpents or two twins, twin boys. And those twin boys are identical twins, and they're also identical in image, in how they look to their father. So it's the one son that is divided up into those two twins. Now, all around the planet, you have manifestations of these twins. And you'll find them in the creation myths in most traditions. They talk about the twins. The twins showed up, and they helped to create this world. They just simply showed up. Okay? But these are the two halves of the one Kartikeya. And they arrived at a time when Earth was completely covered with water. And this was an actual time. If you study the evolution of planet Earth, you'll know that the Earth did go through a phase where it was completely covered with water. Now, according to this man here, who is a Yazidi fakir, Yazidis are a malign tribe of northern Kurdistan who the Muslims love to refer to as the devil worshippers, and Muslim terrorist groups like ISIS have tried to destroy because they are devil worshippers, which they're not, but that's how they identify them. Now, within the Yazidi culture, you have fakirs, you have priests that are in direct communication with this Kartikeya, which they know as the peacock angel. And so much of what they know comes directly from this sun, this being, this sun, this Kartikeya or this peacock angel. Now, what I'm telling you now, a lot of it came directly through this fakir, Kamal Qaso, who I know. I've had many conversations with him over the phone. He lives in Iraq. He did live in Iraq. He's not in body anymore. He actually died during the invasion by ISIS. But fortunately, I was able to talk to him and get a lot of this information. Now, what he told me is that when this son arrived, this Kartikeya, he arrived as the leader of 7 archangels. Okay? And those are the 7 parts of the one sun. And each archangel then created one part of Pangaea. All right? As you know, when Pangaea separated through continental drift theory, it separated into the 7 continents. So each one created a different continent. And so you could say that Pangaea was actually the terrestrial form of this Kartikeya, this 7-aspected, this 7-faceted Kartikeya. All right? That was his form. Now, one way of imagining or conceiving how Kartikeya came to this planet is through the tree of the Kabbalah. And as you see in front of you, there is a tree of Kabbalah, and there is a snake that's slithering down it. What the tree of Kabbalah represents is the many dimensions between spirit and solid earth. And so Kartikeya slithered down through those dimensions in order to come down to earth, to make his way to earth. So he came down as pure energy. And this is why they say one form of Kartikeya is as the serpent or the dragon. Okay? And when this being, Sanat Kumara or Kartikeya, arrived on earth, he actually transmitted his spirit into this world. And at that point, the world then had a living spirit. It didn't really have one before, but it did at that point. Why don't you turn to me now? You sure you sure I'm on? Because it's not on my screen. Oh, okay. All right. So this is important, what I'm telling you now, because this is really the secret of Kartikeya. Okay? Now, many of you are familiar with the idea that there are spirits that inhabit planets and stars in this universe. You may have even have communed with some of these spirits. Those that are on the shamanic path, I know have communed with many of the spirits of different planets, including myself. Now, it is my belief and my understanding that before Kartikeya arrived, our Earth really did not have a spirit. The spirit is the informing principle. It's kind of like, you might say, the program through which that determines the evolution of our planet. That's what Kartikeya is. He is kind of like, you might say, a microchip that has a program in it. So when he inserted himself, his spirit, into this world, he also inserted that microchip. He gave our planet a program of evolution, which it didn't have before. And this program of evolution affects everybody that lives on this planet. Okay? All life forms. It affects everything. Because anybody that exists on any planet or any star, their karma is connected with the karma and the evolution of that planet. Okay? And so when we started incarnating physically on this planet, our karma became one with the karma on this planet. Now, one name of this program that Kartikeya brought, it's not a name that I like to use because people don't like me to use it, usually. Doesn't usually give them a very positive response, but the only name you can really call it is the Luciferian program. And why do I say that? Because what is Lucifer? Lucifer is the fallen angel who came to this planet and took a physical form, right? And then what happened is that he developed an ego, an intellect, and he got too caught up in his ego. And that was the downfall of Lucifer. But that is all of our program. We have all come here to take a physical form. We were spirit before we came here to take a physical form. And why did we take a physical form? Why did we need to take a physical form? Is so that we could know ourselves as spirit incarnate in a physical form. That is what the human drama is all about. Once you know who you are, what you are, where you've been, where you came from, that you are the creator of this whole entire universe, game over. Because the whole universe was created so that spirit could know itself. The ancient rishis of India, they said, at the very beginning of time, spirit asks, who am I? What am I? And that started the whole ball of wax rolling. Down to us. And it is through us that spirit knows itself as the infinite, as the creator of this universe. Okay, does that make sense? That's the Luciferian program. So what happens is spirit becomes incarnated in a physical body like we are right now. And so how is that going to help us to know ourselves? How is that going to help spirit know itself as the infinite? Well, what's going to happen is first we're going to develop a sense of self. We're going to develop such a strong sense of self that we're going to feel separate from everybody else. And that's one thing that distinguishes us from the rest of creation, because there's no other beings and life forms don't have a sense of self. We have a sense of self because we have an ego. Okay? Then what happens is, after you develop a sense of self, then you develop an intellect in order to categorize and understand where we are, where we're living. Okay? And then what happens is we start feeling separate. We start feeling separate from everything else because, well, we've categorized them. Well, you're different than I am. Everything's different than me. And so you start wondering, what am I? And then you start feeling, well, I feel separate from everybody else, and this is not a good feeling. So at that point, you go in search of yourself. What am I? What am I all about? And then that search if it happens in one lifetime, which it can, that search will take you inside yourself, inside your heart. And that is where your true identity is. In your heart, you know, I am the infinite. I am the creator of this universe. I've had that experience myself, and it's amazing. I don't have it continuously, so I have more time here. But that's the experience we are all destined to have. And this is why we have to undergo the Luciferian program. And this was the program that Kartikeya Sanat Kumara brought to this dimension. This is why they call him the first savior. All right? He was the original savior. In fact, the story, the Christ myth, born of the Virgin, the Jesus story that we know of. Born of a virgin, born on December 25th, undergoing the process of enlightenment, dying and resurrecting. All that whole entire story started with Sanat Kumara. He was the original savior. Now look at this form here. Look at this image here. This is the symbol of Earth. And the symbol is a cross. That's the cross of matter. On that cross, that was the cross that Sanat Kumara, Kartikeya, was mailed to. In order to see, when he transmitted his spirit into this world, he was limited. He became limited to matter. Or you could say he was chained to matter. He was that first savior. But the reason he did it was for all of us. So he could enact that Luciferian program for all of us so that we could all achieve enlightenment. So this represents the cross that the original savior was on, which is what he is, and what he was, and what he is. Now, Kartikeya brought those teachings approximately 6 million years ago. Remember I said he was here 200 million years ago? He came back 6 million years ago, and according to the teachings, he has been here ever since. He hasn't left. Now, there are different places on the planet that actually confirm this truth. In Japan, for example, there's a place called Mount Kurama. Some of you might recognize it as a place that Dr. Usui climbed up to get the teachings of Reiki. Right? About halfway up Mount Kurama, there is a temple there. And it's a temple dedicated to Santen. Santen is the Japanese name for Sanat, or Sanat Kumara. And according to them, Sanat Kumara came here 6 million years ago, and he actually transmitted his spirit into that mountain. Well, we know he transmitted his spirit into the whole planet. But they felt it specifically or strongly on that mountain 6 million years ago. There's another place here I'd like to introduce to you, which is Kauai in the Hawaiian Islands. Well, many of us know Kauai, a very, very sacred place. I would say it's the most sacred of all the Hawaiian Islands. And this is a place that was created. The island itself was created 6 million years ago. There again, you have the 6 million years ago. Okay? Now, in recent history, about 40, 50 years ago, there was a man that was directed there. It was actually a guru. He left Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka was or is a headquarters of Sanat Kumara worship and veneration on the planet. He was told by Sanat Kumara Kartikeya to go to Kauai and to found an ashram there on the place that there used to be an ashram. When this man Subramania went to Kauai, he was given access to what we call the Akashic Records. And he has these visions, and he kept having visions of Kauai and all of Lemuria, and he could see ashrams everywhere. Right? And he knew in another lifetime he had been the builder of many of those ashrams. And so he was directed to build an ashram on the volcano of by Kartikeya. And then he was directed to create a temple there, a Shiva temple that was designed to exist for the next 1,000 years. On the grounds of that ashram, today you can see the six-headed form of Kartikeya. And this is one of the biggest representations of him on the whole entire planet. This statue is actually about 10 to 12 feet tall. So that's another place, okay? Now, my initial connection with Kartikeya, Sanat Kumara, well, it actually came probably 40 years ago when I first went to India. And I started studying the Shaivite tradition. And in the Shaivite tradition, you have Shiva and Shakti, and their son is Kartikeya Murugan, or Sanat Kumara, who rides on a peacock. That's his mount. Well, much later in time, now we're up to, let's say about 15 years ago, I am training to be a shaman. I'm apprenticing a shaman in Peru. And we are using a hallucinogenic liquid made out of the San Pedro cactus that we drink that will expand our consciousness and take us into different dimensions. So one day we're high up in the Andes, and he passes me a mug full of this cactus juice, says drink it down, and I do. And something very strange happened at that point. I went to a place that I'd never ever been before, and I had been to a lot of places before because this was after 3 years of studying with my teacher. And I had been to a lot of places, but nothing this strange, I can tell you. And the first thing I noticed, I look around, and I was surrounded by like a million eyes. It was almost like all the forms of nature had opened up, and you can had opened up at once. And in fact, that was really true. But anyway, so I started looking at the eyes, and of course, I'm pretty freaked at that point. I'm thinking, well, is this like 1,000 million, beings, or is this one being with 1,000 million eyes? I mean, the first choice was actually a lot more settling to me. I was hoping it was the first one. But nonetheless, I kept looking at those eyes, and I realized, well, these aren't normal human eyes. These are eyes that you find on a peacock feather. Okay, I see it now. All right, wow, okay. Now what's this all about? And then I saw these peacock feathers come together as peacocks. So yeah, all these peacocks running around. And then the peacocks join together to become bigger peacocks and bigger peacocks and bigger peacocks. And so my whole environment was covered with little peacocks, big peacocks, peacock feathers. And then I started looking around the mountains, and lo and behold, they were gigantic peacocks. Everything was a peacock. I was in the land of the peacock. And where the hell that is or was, I have no idea. That's all I knew. I was in the land of the peacock, and I was in the land of the peacock for a whole day. My shaman didn't even know. He hadn't been there. So when I returned home after this time down in Peru, the first thing I did is I got onto the internet trying to figure out what I had experienced. So I went to these different websites that were associated with the peacock and different traditions and different spiritual traditions, trying to make sense of it. I could find no information until I heard about the Uzedis. And their main deity is known as the peacock angels. So I figured, well, maybe they know something. So I got in touch with the Uzedis, right? And I started studying with them. And one of the first things that they told me is they told me that a long time ago, one of the times that Kartikeya was here, could have been 200 million years ago, could have been the 6 million year time he was here. But a long time ago, he came down because he was the greatest of angels, and the supreme being, the infinite consciousness, told him, come down here, give life and give color to the earth. So he came down in the most colorful form possible, which is the 7-colored peacock angel. 7-colored peacock. And he came down, he landed on Earth in a place that's today known as Lalish, the most sacred place of the Uzedis. At that point, He covered the whole entire planet with his peacock feathers. And those peacock feathers were etheric. So when they crystallized, they became all the forms of nature, all the colorful forms of nature. All right? So he, in a sense, you could say he's truly the green man. And so, but those etheric feathers are still there. And I've seen them many times, and the most crazy thing in the world is when you start seeing physical forms around you, trees, flowers, whatever, and as you're watching them, they turn into peacocks. Let me tell you, it's a strange, strange thing. But, you know, the even stranger thing is that when you see the peacock, you say to yourself, why didn't I see that before? It's just kind of a natural transition from vegetation into the peacock form. It's bizarre. It's totally bizarre. But you know, I believe that a lot of us are going to start seeing that. And you won't have to take my word for it. And you will know what I'm talking about, how strange an experience that can be. Because I believe that those peacock feathers, they exist within what was known in ancient times as the Garden of Eden. Remember, we were the first humans were evicted from the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden never left. It's always been there on another dimension, a higher dimension. And if you study the Garden of Eden, there's many Gardens of Eden. Many Gardens of Eden around this world. And if you study them, quite often you'll find that the peacock is the guardian of Eden. Now, actually, I want to go back to this image of the peacock angel, because what you'll see there is the peacock angel landing on the form of the earth. And the peacock angel, they consider to be the creator of the whole entire universe. The blue, which is the primary color of the peacock angel, even though it's all the 7 colors, that's the spiritual part of the peacock angel. You might say that's his inner head. Of the 7 heads, that's his inner head. Now, from the 7 comes the 3. 3 powers: creation, preservation, destruction, on his head. Right? From the 3 come the 7. Okay, those are the 7 wings in the background, the red wings. From the 7 come the 12. Or you could say from the 7 planets come the 12 signs. There they are. The eyes in the background, the 12. Right? So they believe that he is the creator of the whole entire universe. And that can actually be proven by sacred geometry, which is going to be another class a little bit later on. And I have it all mapped out, where you can actually prove this to be true. And in so many different traditions, they talk about some animal, some creature, some serpent, some snake, some dragon, some peacock, whatever, creating the universe. But you can prove it by sacred geometry. And one thing you can also prove is that our grid, our planetary grid of vortexes and ley lines, actually created by this peacock enveloping or wrapping its feathers around our planet. If you look at the slide in front of you, you'll see that there's many eyes are turned into vortexes, crossing points of lines. Now, if you were to extend that half circle into a full circle and then superimpose that over the planet, you would get all the major known vortexes of our planet. So that's one way you can prove it. You see, if you look at that figure of our planet with the lines superimposed over it, the red lines underneath are the recognized vortexes that you can find on any Earth grid. The other ones, the lighter ones, that are superposed over the red ones, they correspond. They connect with those red vortexes and red lines. Okay? So they're synonymous. They're one and the same. So you can prove that the peacock did, in fact, envelop himself around our planet. You can prove it through studying the planetary grid. Now, going back 6-7 million years ago, remember, according to science, according to the evolution of planet Earth, they say around 6 or 7 million years ago, all of a sudden, things got nice here. They weren't so pretty before that. All of a sudden, you've got grass covering the planet. All of a sudden, you have got flowers and grass. All of a sudden, you have the Garden of Eden. And I believe that this corresponds to that time when the peacock angel arrived and spread his 7 colors around this planet. At that point, 6 million years ago, he created this Garden of Eden. All right. Now, on this slide, you'll notice that in the center you have the Earth, which is the physical form, you might say, of the peacock angel Kartikeya. Right? His spirit exists within it, and the physical form of the Earth is his physical body. Right? And so the Uzedi say, okay, it's the physical body of the peacock angel. But the Taoists say, no. They say it's the form of a dragon. What they say is the rivers and veins are the arteries of this dragon. The large mountain ranges are its back. The surface of the earth is his skin. The clouds are his breath. Right? But look at those two figures of the peacock and the dragon. Look how similar they are. And in fact, at one time, when I was seeing the peacock angel, which I've been seeing quite regularly since that first time 15 years ago, one time when I'm seeing him, he kind of motions. He says, come on over here for a second. And I come over there, and he says, I want to show you something really neat. And I said, okay, well, this I can't wait to see this, because he'd showed me a lot of things already in the past that were really neat. I said, okay, what do you got this time? He said, well, I'm going to show you how I can turn myself into a dragon. And all he does is tweak his form just a little bit, and it's a dragon, just like you see there in the upper left-hand corner. So in ancient times, the sages, when they actually tap into the Akashic records, they will see as the creator, some will see it as a dragon, some will see it as a peacock, because they are one and the same. And some will see it as a phoenix as well. And so the sun is truly the green man. And this is how he became known to the earliest cultures. What they would say, and there was actually a legend that circulated around the planet at that time, is that the sun was given life to every year in the spring, as all the forms of nature. His mother, the earth, gave birth to him as the forms of nature. And this always happened in the spring. Now, since it happened every spring, it was also said, well, the green man is resurrected at that time. Do you have me on there? That the green man was resurrected at that time. They don't say necessarily he was created. He was resurrected so that we have more of that story of Sanat Kumara. He's resurrected every spring as all the forms of nature. And then he matures rapidly. It says that he mates with his mother, and then he dies with all the forms of nature in the fall. That's a legend that circulated around the planet. All right. But what also was circulated is that while he's alive, he governs this world for his mother, under her authority, and under the authority of his father, who is the infinite spirit. Okay? And so in the slide here, you can see the green man holding a scepter, and he's got kind of a a crown. I mean, the tree in back of him, the branches are making his crown. And he's actually holding fish because he's also known as the founder of the Holy Grail tradition, and he's the original Fisher King. Remember, the Fisher King was the original guardian of the Holy Grail. And this is part of this was the tradition that was brought here by Sanat Kumara. Sanat Kumara brought to this world the tradition, the path, the practices that lead to enlightenment, which we would call alchemy. And together they lead to gnosis, so I refer to that path as the Gnostic alchemical path. All right? And this is the path that he brought for all of us so that we could ultimately achieve self-knowledge, that we are the infinite encased in a physical body. Now what's interesting here, to go back to the Green Man as king of the world, in all different traditions in the ancient times, the kings were actually recognized as incarnations of the Green Man. All right? And, for example, if you go to the Mesopotamian tradition, the kings were always incarnations of Dumuzi, Tammuz, who is the son of Inanna or Ishtar, great goddess. Right? In other traditions, they have different names for the Green Man, but almost always their king is the incarnation of their Green Man. And because of that, they depend on their king in order to bring life to their country. They depend on their king to bring forth the vegetation every year, because that is his form. And as soon as they start having years of drought, when that doesn't happen, what do? They get rid of that king. And they put another one on the throne that will then incarnate himself, the Green Man. And you can find this all over the world. There's actually a book called The Golden Bough by a man named James Fraser, who talks all about this tradition all over the world. Okay. Now, remember one thing, that this being, this son of the goddess, he's truly androgynous. I mean, he's truly energy. Even though he's represented as male, he takes a male form, but truly he's androgynous. He was formed by the union of God, goddess. Remember, his form is the six-pointed star. Now, one of his forms is known as the Shiva Lingam in the Hindu tradition. Now, if you look on your screen, at the top part, you'll see different forms of Shiva Lingam. The upper right, that's the traditional form. You have the male phalanx that is fertilizing the female womb, right? And so that is one of the forms of Sanat Kumara Kartikeya. This, what we call Shiva Lingam, is actually the basis behind the sword and the stone. And thus you can understand that whole tradition, the Arthurian tradition, as Arthur was recognized as the embodiment of the Green Man. And the goddess would only release that sword to the Green Man, her son, to rule her planet. And that's why nobody but Arthur could release the sword. And actually, most depictions of the sword and the stone was of an anvil with a sword inserted into the anvil. So this is one of the true symbols of Kartikeya Sanat Kumara, and it's a symbol that you're going to find, and I'll be showing you this. You're going to be able to find it in different parts of the world where his presence and energy is very, very strong. All right. And so many of his symbols and manifestations are androgynous. For example, he does manifest as a peacock. One of the things they say about the peacock, it is the union of God-goddess. It is this cry of the devil and the beauty of an angel. I mean, they say all these kind of things to show you that it is the union of the polarity. Okay? So most of his symbols that represent the polarity, the union of male, female united together. Now, one of his main places, one main headquarters, if you will, main courts, is what's known as Mount Kailash in Tibet. Now, before I get into that, I wanted to say that when the Kartikeya Sanat Kumara became one with this earth, his chakras became the earth's chakras. All right. So, his chakra is Mount Kailash, and his other chakras are also represented by androgynous symbols of him. If you look at this symbol, you look at this mountain of Mount Kailash in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, it's a perfect lingam. Perfect Shiva lingam. It's unbelievable. That is a symbol. That's where he exists. The most holy mountain in the whole planet. Nobody's even been able to climb it. It's so holy. All right. And on the other side of the world, you have his root chakra, which is, I have found, to be Sedona, Arizona. Now, if you look below Mount Kailash, to your lower left-hand side, lower left-hand corner, you have our capital peak, or Thunder Mountain, in the center of Sedona, which also takes the shape of a Shiva lingam. Okay? And actually, you can find the other chakras of the earth, of Kartikeya, if you start in Mount Kailash, with that being the root chakra, and you make Sedona the root chakra, that's the crown chakra, you make Sedona the root chakra, then if you connect them together by a rod, you have the spine of the earth. Okay? And on that spine, you have the heart chakra of the world, which is Shambhala. Shambhala, the land of the immortals. And that's the image in the center of that picture. Shambhala is made as an 8-petal lotus. And that's the heart lotus, the 8-petal lotus. And just like spirit exists within our heart chakra, Kartikeya Sanat Kumara, the spirit of the earth, exists within this 8-petal lotus of the earth's heart chakra. Now, to the right of that, you have a great king who's known as the king of Agartha. He also channels or embodies that energy of Kartikeya, and he's also one of those chakras. Now, here's a better picture of the lingam of Mount Kailash. You can see it more clearly. Now, where do many of his courts, or so many of his courts, line up is on a 30-degree band of latitude around the planet. 30-degree north latitude, okay? And this is also where you find Mount Kailash on that 30-degree band, and also Sedona. What you do is you take 30-degree north latitude and you go 10 degrees above, 10 degrees below, a 20-degree band, put it around the earth, and you're going to have most of the ancient courts of this king of the world, this Kartikeya, this Sanat Kumara. Okay? I call it the royal road of the king. And it's interesting because so many of these places on this band are referred to as his ancient court. They say this is where the king of the world existed. And they say, yes, this is the middle of the world. And yes, there was a Garden of Eden here. And they say that about all these different places. So he manifested in all these different places. And so you could say that these are courts and thrones of this king of the world. And so you have, as I said, you have the Shiva lingam of Mount Kailash in this slide. And above that you have a version of the lingam that I discovered in Boynton Canyon in Sedona. I was led there to find the court of the ancient king, Sanat Kumara. When I arrived there, I found a horseshoe shape of temples And in the center, I saw what looked like a gigantic throne. But it didn't look like a throne, a classic throne. And in time, I realized, well, what I'm seeing is a Shiva Lingam. At the same time,